So this, you guys, is really a story of two people. A lot of people have probably seen some video, if not on my channel, somewhere about the murder in Humboldt Park back in the 90s, in which there were three young women. One of them was a teenage girl, Jackie Montanez, charged in this case. They had allegedly killed two guys. One was, I believe, a Latin king, and the other one I don't think was actually a Latin king, but like he was the homie of the Latin king. And I don't think that the homie of the MLDs was actually a gang member either. I'm pretty sure he was a neutron that just knew them and was their friend too. And a lot of times that can happen in Chicago. Guys go to the same school, guys grew up in the same neighborhood, they're childhood friends with some guys that later join gangs, and then guilt by association, they end up getting killed over something that they got, they didn't even choose to have anything to do with. And back in the 90s, that was a situation where you had to voluntarily join that gang. It wasn't like you just grew up in that neighborhood and you're automatically a member of the set. No, you had to get jumped in, you had to learn a lit, all that stuff. With every gang, and with the Hispanic gangs, I think some of it's still like that. Jackie Montanez was eventually convicted in participating in this, and the other two were convicted of participating in it too. But what role each one exactly had in the murder to this day is fuzzy because of the situation that we're going to talk about right here. Whether or not one of them was even there is questionable. The one that we're going to talk about, because one of the detectives who was involved in this has now had a lot of cases that are being overturned because of dirty techniques that were being used to get these confessions. Now that case is all done, but the one that I'm going to talk about in this video is one who normally doesn't get talked about. Marilyn Mulero is her full name. But this video is also going to be about the detective that got her stuck not only in prison but on death row when she was a young mom. And later she was exonerated for that. Now this guy has had a lot of other cases that have been overturned. He's a senior citizen by now. I believe he's about 80 years old. And so it's a situation where he may be facing charges coming soon, although those have not been brought yet. Kim Fox was talking about the fact that they might be looking at him pretty soon. There's been a lot of corruption in the Chicago Police Department, so he hasn't been convicted of anything yet. But like I said, a lot of the convictions that, a lot of the so-called confessions that he got, bogus, okay? And Mary Mulero, she was later exonerated, so this is going to be a little about what's happened to her, like, during that whole saga, because when people talk about that, they only focus typically on Jackie Montanez, myself included, but the MLDs and the Latin Kings were in a war at the time. This is in the 90s, and they have beef until today. The D's are kind of like I would say it's a mostly north side gang from what I know. Latin Kings is all over. But I would say that on the north side, to declare their numbers is tough because those are two really deep gangs up north. But anyways, those are probably the two biggest Hispanic gangs up north, the D's and the Kings. I know the D's were real deep on the northwest side. At least when I was substitute teaching, they completely had a couple high schools. And the Kings, you find them literally everywhere. There's even Latin Kings all the way over on the east side, like in the letter streets, all the way by the border of Indiana. So that gang is ubiquitous. They're everywhere. So these gangs, had a really fierce battle going on, and apparently there was one of the homies and the D's had been killed, and then the D's wanted to ride for retaliation. Yeah, the females get involved too. A lot of times when people see the females on the homicide reports, she must have been innocent. No, not necessarily. She might have been, might not. And there was one of the particular cops here, and I'm not saying this, you guys know me, okay? You guys know that I try, people think that I'm like super pro cop and just support them 100% of the time, and I do support the police in general. I'm a police supporter, but when the cop does crooked stuff, that makes it harder for all police. So this is an example of that, man. And she spent 5 years of a 29-year murder sentence on death row, and a lot of these people that are executed, are innocent because there's a lot of corruption in the system. This is what people got to understand, man. Even if it seems obvious, a lot of times there's something else that was going on, even if it seems like that's the person who did it. And so she would have eventually been killed. Okay, but she was exonerated, and she is begging the detective who framed her to tell the truth now. Okay, so Marilyn Mulero, she's now in her 50s. She's one of 7 people in Chicago to be exonerated for murder in the past month. Just the past month. Okay, this comes as a result of a detective named Ronaldo Guevara, 79, being accused of falsifying evidence and intimidating witnesses between 1989 and 1996, and that was a time when a lot of this was going on, guys. So Mulero is now 50 years old. She was convicted for the 1992 murder during a 20-hour straight interrogation session. She was denied sleep and a lawyer. So I don't know if she asked for a lawyer or not. That would be interesting. But she was also told their kids would be taken away unless she confessed to at least one of the murders. And she said, quote, "I just hope that he will finally tell the truth because he destroyed a lot of lives, and not only lives, but also destroyed families." So she said that she's now working on rebuilding her life and her relationship with her sons. And to date, 31 wrongful homicide convictions linked to this one particular detective have now been overturned. This is not including other detectives. This is just this one guy, 31. Including 8 murder cases this month, including Mulero. So an Illinois mother, they're saying, who spent those 5 years on death row and had her 2 young sons taken away from her before being exonerated, has tearfully begged the detective who framed her to tell the truth after destroying her family. So he's never admitted to any wrongdoing and has never been convicted. And to this day, he collects a city pension. So she, at the time, was a single mother of 2 boys, ages 5 and 7. And she said, quote, "I have no hatred. At this point, he's almost my dad's age, so I wish him no harm." She said, "I just hope that he will finally tell the truth because he's destroyed a lot of lives, and not only lives, but he also destroyed families. He lied to the victims' families as well." So she was accused along with 2 other people for the revenge murders of Jimmy Cruz and Hector Reyes, who were lured to a bathroom and shot dead in Humboldt Park. And you guys, I've covered that story a lot on my old channel, so I'm not going to repeat that stuff here, but that's a very famous case in Chicago history. Jackie Montanez, Loca D. She was just a teenager at the time, man, allegedly involved in that murder. But Mulero said, "I didn't know the victims. I only came across them that night. I was a single mother of 2. I had a job. I was just trying to live a good life on my own with my mom and my children." So she at the time was accused by police of being a member of the Maniac Latin Disciples, which was a rival gang to the Latin Kings. On the night of the murder, police said that she was with 2 other women who shot Cruz and Reyes. After her arrest, she was relentlessly interrogated by Guevara. Detectives even threatened her with lethal injection unless she confessed to Cruz's murder. That false coerced confession became a death sentence for the then 21-year-old woman. She said it was hurtful because, or she was referring to her son, she said, "They did not know that I was incarcerated until they saw it on the news. Every time my children came to see me on death row, I would come in shackled from the waist, my hands down to the ankles, and I would walk in the room all chained up." She described how one of her sons would use quarters to try to undo the handcuffs so that she could go home. She said, my youngest son started to have anxiety, and to this day, she said, both of my sons are still traumatized by the situation. She said, "I don't think of them as grown men. I still dream of them as toddlers because that's how I left them." So today, her sons each have a son and a daughter of their own, and always a tight-knit family. Marilyn even lived with one of her sons and his family when she was released from prison. She says that she will never forget or forgive the pain of being on death row because she was sentenced without a trial after accepting an open plea on the advice of her legal counsel. She said that being on death row was barbaric and she was subject to conditions and saw things that no human should ever go through or see. So that's a whole nother story, man. But forgiveness is essential especially for one's own healing. But she said, "I did not know all the legal terminology, so I did not know that I was already sentenced to death. The bailiffs asked me, 'Are you aware of what just happened there?' And I'm like, 'No.' And they explained to me that I was just sentenced to death by lethal injection. So they took me back to the unit, and the ladies were crying, and they're like, they're going to effing kill you. And she said that's when it became real. So she said that being on death row was, quote, barbaric. And she said there was a little young lady with me at Logan Correctional Center. She was 32 years old. Her name was Shirley, and she used to call me Grandma. The male correctional officers there treated us like garbage, like we were nothing. They called us every name in the book. So Shirley told the warden, I'm having suicidal thoughts and I don't want to be here. Take me out of here. And the warden said, well, if you feel like committing suicide, go ahead and commit suicide. The next day, she hung herself. And Mulero said, it hit me and the ladies in the unit really hard. She said, many of these women have psychiatric issues. A correctional facility is supposed to lift up people and help them. It's not supposed to destroy somebody's life. She said that it was overwhelming being a free woman and being able to reunite with her sons. She said it felt good, very emotional, but good. It felt like 70 pounds lifted from my shoulders. She said it felt good knowing that I no longer have to carry this burden with me. I feel for the victims' parents, too. I'm sorry that they've had to relive this moment over and over again. I keep them in my prayers and hope that they can find closure. So she's now working on rebuilding her life and her relationship with her son. She's going back to school to train as a barber. And she submitted an application for the Illinois Prison Project application to become an ambassador for change in the prison system and an advocate for other women behind bars. She added that she does not view all police officers as she does that one particular detective. She said that I'm not saying that all police officers are bad, because they're not. Everyone's a human being. Everyone's compassionate. We all have a heart. Some people just find it in their heart to be corrupted, and there's nothing that you can do about these people. So she's Guevara's first and only female victim to be exonerated. To date, 31 murder convictions have been overturned. When asked about Mulero's exoneration, a spokesperson for the Chicago Corporation Council, which represents Guevara, said the city has no comment. So after Mulero and 7 other people were exonerated in early August, the DA, Kim Foxx, announced that she was reviewing possible charges against Guevara, who retired in 2005. So in a press conference announcing the exonerations, Foxx said, could we try these cases again today without the work of Detective Guevara? Based on our review, we are not able to retry these cases. She added additional investigations could be conducted to see if in fact someone else committed these crimes. So Guevara has never admitted any wrongdoing and has repeatedly invoked his constitutional rights against self-incrimination, or insisted that he could not remember facts when questioned under oath. So in one case, after he was granted immunity by prosecutors, he answered repeatedly that he did not remember confessions he elicited from 2 men convicted of murder. And when he took the stand in a separate federal court in a civil lawsuit brought by a man who spent 21 years in prison, Guevara invoked his Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination more than 200 times. In both those cases, the city of Chicago paid out millions to the men involved, including one payment for $20.5 million and another for $17 million. So he and the city have dozens of other lawsuits pending against him. So that's what's going on with Mary Mulero right now, guys. I'm glad that she's finally out of prison and not having to face the death penalty anymore, especially, man. You can see how a lot of innocent people can end up on death row, and hopefully she'll be able to forgive and heal from that and get her life back on track, man. But condolences too to her kids for all the time that they lost. I know that's really hard on kids, man, to see your mom in chains and stuff like that. But they're grown men now with their own families, so just giving you guys a little update on her. And I've been trying to get like information on Jackie Montanez and what's been going on with her too. But I haven't seen any updates on her in a few years. And then on the other girl too, Mendoza, I think was her last name. So yeah, rest in peace to the 2, the guy killed and the MLD's homie too. But you can see all these years later how that momentary decision, causes all this pain in the long run to a lot of people that weren't even, born at the time, coming to the world into that messed up situation that's the result of the aftermath of a decision that like teenagers made in the midst of this gang conflict, that a lot of times on the internet we gas up. And then, I've been guilty of that too, but then, this has a real life emotional impact on real people, man. This is your boy, Witness Report. I'm out.